think, oh, this person was a great GM, and I think people automatically think that means they should be a great multi-unit leader. Very different skill sets. Just because someone can run a great restaurant does not mean they can run 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And so I think that's one thing I wanted to ask you about. And then the other thing I would just want to, well, you know what, I guess I'll let you answer that first. Like, so what's, like when you're meeting with someone and they're a really great GM, how do you identify whether or not they have the potential to do more? Like, what does that look like?
You know, I think it again comes down to that level of enthusiasm for what they're doing. Have they committed to this being a career path,
right,
or a direction that they're going, or are they just Betty that got promoted and happen to do a good job? You know, you really, I don't think there's a one big solution for it all. There's no one fits all. I like to look at it as, what have I done to help develop that person? So when I ran these restaurants, I ended up being the guy that would train the GMs, and they would just send me another assistant manager because the assistant I had got promoted up.
Right.
And it was all about, what skills do you need to know? What knowledge do you have to have? Do you understand the identity of what we're doing? Do you really live and breathe the brand? Do you understand everything that we do? Yep. Can you build a team and build a culture and maintain the culture that we've built as a brand?
Right.
Because there is some consistencies. Once you get into a chain and you start expanding, you do have to have the consistencies of, you know, we're all doing the birthday song, or
we're not.
We're not. But more likely in the chain, it's like, yeah, no, we're all doing this.
Right.
We're going to like it. Unfortunately, that's what happens. But you know, to me, it's how can you develop that person? If I haven't tried hard enough as a manager, as a regional manager, whatever I am, if I haven't put the effort into being able to give that person those basics, then they're not going to succeed. They're not going to have the opportunity.
No, they won't.
So, you know, it's all about their attitude at that point. If they've got a great attitude and want to try, I will give anybody that will give me an inch, I'll give you a mile. If you are going to give me an effort, I will teach you everything I possibly can at a pace that I feel you're getting it, right?
Of course.
I'm not going to push it all on you and say, you need to know this now. Right. You've got 1 week to learn absolutely everything, or you're not moving on.
Right.
I'm going to teach you at the pace that's right for you. And if you don't succeed, you know, I take that as a bit of personal failure as well. But you know, like some people they don't want to move up. Some people are happy where they are and what they're doing. So,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
There's all a balance of, you know, is it this person's attitude and is it their direction, and have they decided that this is where they want to go? Can you roadmap a career path for them to say, okay, I'm giving you the skill sets and you're learning them and you are achieving. Right. You are growing and you are maturing as a manager and as a leader. Great. Here's more. And I don't like taking a jump from GM to regional without having trained. You know, it's not something I think you should do as an overnight. Sometimes you have to. You don't have a choice. You're busting out of the seams, expanding. Like, you know, I've listened to your other podcast with Chipotle, and you know, exploding into from 200 to 20,000 or something.
Well, it was,
you know, it's
it was going from like. So I was interviewing one of my former restaurateurs the other day, Damien Biggins, who's now back in Austin, but he spent 7 years internationally. He was in Canada. He was in London, and he was, you know, in Paris. So he did all this, and you know, both he and I started about a year apart. Like when we both started, there were less than 200 restaurants. When I left, there was 1,200. When he left, there was 2,200. So it's like this explosive growth, right? But even in that scenario, I think the thing that made us so successful during that sweet spot of growth was that the answer to everyone was when they asked us, how quickly are you going to grow, how much are you going to grow, the answer always was, we'll grow with as many great people as we have to grow with. That was the answer. Yeah. And it was the right answer, right?
Very much.
So that you're not in a position where you're shotgunning somebody to get them to a GM or to a service manager, to a kitchen manager, whatever.
Listen, stop sweeping the floor. I need you to run the restaurant.
Exactly. Which we know, we grew up in this business. That's how it used to be, right?
Yeah.
Typically, we promote hourly supervisors that were on the cash register. Oh, they can count money, so they must be successful, or they will be successful. Let's give them keys to the store. It was a terrible decision, right? That's how everyone did it in the 80s, right? In the 90s, or at least the first part of the 90s for sure, to the last part of the 90s. And it was terrible. For 2 decades we did this in the business. It was a terrible decision. And we wonder why so many restaurants failed, because we didn't have that focus on leadership development. Which is a great segue, because you started talking about leadership a couple minutes ago, and you said it was perfect, like right on cue, like you almost knew. But like when you think about all that you teach, I'm just really thinking about S.I.C.K, right? I'm thinking about it. Like I think you need to trademark it too, before someone steals it. You should do that. So now that I've given everyone the idea on the podcast, they're going to steal it. But so what's one leadership tip that you know, whether it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or yesterday, that you know is just as true today as it was then, that you can share with our listeners?
You know, I think if you have faith in what you're doing, what your people are doing, and who your people are, you have to have that understanding and belief in the process and everything that you're doing. I really think that's a very big key, because if you don't believe in what you're doing, as a leader, how can you get other people to follow you?
That's right.
You know, and I think that's something that might be a little lost these days. You know, there's so much going on social media and so much negativity, and you see it now coming out of the people trying to be their genuine self and having these heartfelt moments on social media and saying, oh, you know, it's great. Well, you know, fine, but believe in what you're doing as a manager and as a leader, and I think you'll succeed greater than.
I love it.
Yeah, but it's true. It's, you know, it is being your own true self, but it's really having that confidence and faith in what you're doing. You know, and I think people see it, people relate to it. You know, this guy knows what he's doing. You might be absolutely terrified out of your mind,
right? But
if everybody else around you knows that you're the calm, cool guy because you believe in what you're doing, you've got that understanding, you can win over everybody. You can win over millions.
I think that authenticity is that's one of the missing things, I think, in this business, right? I think part of being authentic, being genuine, you know, humility, all those things, like you might be the leader, but you don't have all the answers. And I think it's when you are open and honest enough. You know, I'll go back to the beginning of something you said in the very beginning of this interview. Like, let's get those ideas from our people, right? Let's pull those ideas in. Let's.
What are you scared of?
Absolutely, right?
I've heard some pretty dumbass ideas.
Well, hey, and
I've heard some really phenomenal ones too.
So I went to LeaderCast, which is the largest one-day leadership seminar in the world, and it's in Atlanta every May. And a couple years ago, one of the guys who was up there on stage speaking said this, and I found it, as I've been continuing to process it, like the next generation is going to be able to figure out problems that we can't figure out, right? So like problems that we have right now, they're not going to come, we're typically not going to find that solution in this generation. It's going to be the next generation that figures it out, which makes your point about leadership all the more important, right? And that inclusiveness of bringing everyone to the table and saying, hey, what's your idea, right? I mean,
it's such an old idea, right? You're only as strong as your weakest link and all of that, yada yada. But I think it's really just a belief in your people.
Yeah.
If you believe and you can identify, again, even in your servers or your host or your bartender or your cook, or your dishwasher.
Yeah.
Do they have potential? Great. You know, are they giving me effort? Perfect. Let me work with that.
That's right.
You know, and that's believing in your people, believing in the process of doing that.
Totally agree.
And I think you only get that as a leader if you believe in what you're doing.
Yeah.
if you as a leader believe that what you're doing has a purpose.
That's right.
And you have to find that.
Awesome.
So if you find that you're Betty and you've been promoted up and everybody else is surpassing you and you're getting frustrated, find your passion.
Yeah.
Is there a passion for it? And I think that's just those moments of introspection where you have to sit and meditate or whatever you're going to do to figure out where you want to be in life.
And thanks so much for listening to part 1 of my conversation with Andrew Craig on the Cutting Onions podcast. I'm so excited for you to hear part 2 of the conversation, which will air next Thursday. Thanks again for joining us, and please, if you're enjoying this podcast, please rate us on iTunes or wherever you consume podcast content, and leave us a review. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and have a great week.